the fine arts, and the performing arts. In 2022, marking its 35th year, the museum launched the Janal Talks, the Janal Digital Archive, a program that develops digital exhibitions on historical archives and community histories from Kerala. Janal Talks lecture series forms part of this program, offering public conversations on Kerala's past, present, and future. Supported by the Geojit Foundation, it fulfills the museum's mission of making history accessible to all. Since its inception in 2022, Janal Talks has created a platform for scholars, practitioners, thought leaders, and audiences to connect with evolving stories of Kerala's plural histories, society, culture, politics, and environment. We extend a heartfelt thanks to our sponsors, to our collaborators, past speakers, and the entire Kerala Museum community for making Janal Talks a space where knowledge, inquiry, and public dialogue flourish. The current season 3 continues this approach and shifts focus to reflecting on how landscapes, trade, and everyday lives have influenced Kerala's collective memory and identity. At the first lecture of this season, for example, Pepper, Landscape and Memory, Dr. Pius Malikandathil examined how the spice trade shaped Kerala's environment and social fabric, reminding us that the physical landscapes are also repositories of memory and meaning shaped by interaction, aspiration, and change. Season 3 is inspired by the photographs gifted to the Janal Archive by Kerala scholar Robin Jeffrey, author of The Decline of Nair Dominance. They are stills of Kerala of the early 1980s. We'll be revealing them to you all over the next 2 months. Our speaker for the day is Thrissur-based architect Vinod Kumar, MM. He has been involved in several significant conservation projects and ecological restoration initiatives across the state. His work also extends to curating festivals and conducting workshops. A 2-time recipient of the UNESCO Asia Pacific Awards, he currently serves as the convener of the Intact Thrissur chapter. His talk today reflects on 2 decades of working with memory, material, and the ever-shifting environment of Kerala. What began as an unexpected encounter with Kerala's architectural traditions during an internship with Mickey and Madhavi Desai in Ahmedabad in 1995 evolved into a personal and professional journey rooted in place, people, and craft. In those early years of his practice, Vinod traveled across Kerala, documenting house forms, villages, furniture, and people. And these encounters revealed how architecture carries memory, shaped not just by form, by the hands and the lives around it. Conservation projects like Sakthan Palace, Ramanilayam, and the ongoing restoration of Vadakkunnathan Temple offered further insight into Kerala's layered heritage. I will leave it to Vinod to tell you more about the work that he has done. But before I invite him to the podium, I want to remind you all of a few house rules. The talk will be for about 45 minutes, followed by a Q&A. So please put your mobile phones on silent during the lecture. And if you urgently have to attend a call, kindly step out of the room to do so. Now, I warmly welcome architect Vinod Kumar to the podium.
I'd like to thank Aditi for the introductory talk and also the museum for inviting me for this lecture. Okay, the title is Building Memory, Philosophies of Conservation and Craft in Kerala. Now let's go to the first slide. Now, I think we need to start with the context. Whatever we talk of Kerala, we need to understand or we need to set the context. where are we talking from? Why are we here today? Who are we as people? So in this whole, we all know Kerala is in the southern tip of India. It's a state around 600 kilometer long, around 100 kilometer wide, and then it has its own peculiarities. Most important one being that it has the southwest monsoon. Then how did southwest monsoon happen? It's because we have the Arabian Ocean on one side and we have the Western Ghats on the other side. And because of monsoon, we had these trade winds, we had travelers coming to our land from time immemorial. And because of monsoons, we had pepper, like what you said, we had spices. And because of that, people came here. And again, because of the peculiar landscape of the geography of our land, we have the land sloping from the Western Ghats to the ocean. So we have around 41 rivers in our land. And again, we have capacities, or we have systems where the water was protected, or we had agriculture systems like coal wetlands where we don't allow the entire set of water to flow to the ocean. So we had checks, which happened in households also. We had ponds. And so the entire landscape created whatever we are today. And its influence can be seen in everything: our language, our clothes, religions. So everything has sprung from the land. And we have a lot of inland waterways, which again was used for the spice trade. So I think we have to respect the land, and from the land, whatever we are today has evolved. And because of that, what has happened is we have had responses in architecture. And these responses have been there from ages. The materials can change. A lot of materials have changed. We have moved away from thatch. We have had Mangalore tiles. We have had copper. And nowadays we have so many new materials. But always there has been this evolution. And because of that architecture, because of the climate, because of the geography, the way we built has been very much influenced. And when we talk of the climate, yes, we are very humid. We have a lot of humidity, and we need breeze to flow through. And then we need that extra bit of veranda to sit there, to enjoy the rain, to protect ourselves from the sun. And then we also had things like Tattumburam, attic, and again, things like Charupadi, four-leaf door. And even for a veranda, we had details which helped the breeze to flow through the feet. So these are very indigenous details which develop in Kerala. Sorry, yeah. And to talk about my connection with Kerala architecture, I would say it started in 1995. Although I was studying architecture, I was not that keen on this. I was not very much interested. But then one day, along with some classmates, we landed up in Ahmedabad, and some of them had already gotten some offices, and I was not placed at that time. So we went around offices, and lastly, I think I went to Mickey's office, where I never knew about him. And then he kind of was happy to know that I'm from Thrissur, from Kerala. And at that point of time, he happened to be doing a documentation for Kumar Devi Temple in Kottayam. It was for an exhibition in Europe. So he's happy to meet me. And then somehow, since I didn't get anywhere, or, I went there in the last minute, I joined with him. And the next 6 to 8 months, we were doing these drawings, and these were huge sheets, gateway sheets, pretty large drawings, and each drawing took something like 2 months to make. And myself and one classmate, both of us were there. We spent around 8 to 9 months in the studio doing these drawings, and that relationship somehow continued. After that, I had joined him for some documentation projects in Kerala, and this is a model of that, in 1:20 scale made there. And these sheets were exhibited across Europe, and this is a section, and these are very, very, you can say, very fine drawings where each detail is marked. Everything is in great detail. Yeah. So that was my first encounter with Kerala architecture, you can say. And after that, I used to travel. I used to travel across Kerala. And this was also because I was not very busy those times. So we had a lot of time. And then again, there was an interest to Kerala landscape. There was an interest to document some of the old places, palaces, temples, and in that whole process, traveled across Kerala quite a bit. And myself was there. One of my friend was there, Biju. Both of us used to travel in an old car, and that way we encountered many people, many landscapes, and places like the first one. This place is a place called Thiruvariyod in Malappuram. At that point of time, I couldn't see any concrete building there. And this is a beautiful temple, Panyal, where we had three ponds within the courtyard and within the space. And then there's a temple near Chelakara. And these are beautiful furniture which we saw in some of those old places, very much designed, very finely designed furnitures. And then this is a typical space in a old house where you can just sit and maybe enjoy the whole 2 months of monsoon. So I think these are things which our landscape had, and we had we had responded to the landscape in fine ways, in beautiful ways, and that is what perhaps which made Kerala special. Still, Kerala tourism talks about all this, which bring people, and we used to organize talks from IEA Thrissur, and always when we invite people to Kerala, they are very happy to come, maybe because of the landscape and the structures which we have. And another structure which we studied was Brahmasammadam. This is again the very important structure in Thrissur, which is an old mutt started by Shankaracharya's disciples, and still it survives. Still, it's a beautiful place. So during my thesis in college, we studied this structure, and also it was an architect Sanjay Mohe in Bangalore was a guide, and then it was also a way of looking at these structures in a modern perspective with respect to light, with respect to breeze, how the water flew, how the light came into the structure. So that interaction with Mohe sir somewhere allowed me to understand these traditional spaces in a modern way. So that was very important. And Mickey also documented this structure after that. And this structure is still very beautiful, and we can see how light enters into the structure through the water. So these are all details which we can still see in these structures. And a Vedic Gurukulam functions there, where Vedas are taught in the traditional way. Maybe the only place in Kerala where this style of Vedic chanting is practiced. And after that, in my first major project, I would say, is Sakthan Palace. And again, during the course of travels, I used to be close with Archaeological Survey of India, maybe because of reasons where you need sanctions from them to take photographs, to visit some of these places. So I used to visit these offices pretty often. So one day I had come to Kochi to Hill Palace for some function along with them. Then they said they got this new, after a lot of litigation, they've taken up this palace in Thrissur and they're planning to do something there. So the next day they were coming to Thrissur and they said, why don't you come along? We can see the place. So they were planning for museum and all that. So I also went there the next day, and we saw this beautiful 6-acre landscape or land right in the heart of the city, which was just taken over by ASI, by the state archaeology, and they were planning for museums. They had plans there. And so we had this whole landscape around, which is around 6 acres, which was lying in a bad condition. There was a sacred grove there. So then at that spot of time, there were a few people, there were some senior archaeologists. We came to a decision, why don't we make it a heritage garden at that point of time? And then we had no idea what is a heritage garden, but then somehow, maybe because of the travels and all that, we had an idea, okay, this is something which we can explore there. And the next 3 years, I would say this was the most important project for us in the office, where we could encounter a lot of archaeologists, a lot of bamboo experts, butterfly garden experts, biodiversity experts, politicians, sculptors, local indigenous sculptors. Now, when we worked with people like Shanguni Chetan, who's sitting here, many of them are not there anymore, but it's a group of people who do laterite carving. You call them Kallashari. At that point of time, there was still a community living near Thekkinkadu, near Ullur in Thrissur. So the entire group came there and worked along with us. And we had sculptors, very fine sculptors from all over the country, mostly Malayali sculptors who had studied in Baroda. And so we worked with a lot of them. We worked with very fine ecologists, archaeologists. So this whole 3 years where I almost lived in this place, it kind of gave me an introduction into the Kerala landscape and also sculpture, art, you know. So it was a very important project that way for us in the office. And this is a sacred grove there, which was protected. And we did more than 500, planting more than 500 trees in that entire campus. And the theme was forest within a city. And still in Thrissur, that's there right in the heart of the city, still surviving. And it's a around 600-meter walkway. You can pass through this whole palace. And there's a small pond here, not small, around 3-acre pond there called Vadakkunnathan, which we did after this. It was a continuous project. I haven't got slides of that, but this entire campus is around 6 acres. And this part is the heritage garden. This is the palace. And while doing this project, someone approached me again from archaeology, telling me that now this TVS group, a corporate, they have plans to do Vadakkunnathan Temple. And they're looking for some local architect there. They're finding it difficult sitting in Chennai to handle this project. So why don't you approach them? Why don't we arrange a meeting? So during that time, I went and met the people there. And somehow, it's the kind of relation is still continuing with them after 20 years. So in this project, we kind of understood the whole meaning of Indian art or architecture. In a way, it's very different from the typical conservation or Western conservation models, which used to happen in India till that time, till that point of time. And we understood that the whole idea of conservation practice in Indian contexts, we can call it Jirnodharana. It also looks at a structure like a living being. So it's not looked as object, a temple or even a small structure. We consider it has a life. So now what happens when you get into old age, you go for an Ayurvedic treatment or you go for some kind of restoration for your body where you bring back some life into it. So similarly, a structure like this, we believe, okay, it has aged, but still it lives, it has a life. We need to refresh it or we need to give it back its life. So that's the whole concept of Jirnodharana. And according to our assessment, for around 100 years, there was no major restoration work which has happened there. So this happened almost after 100 years. Actually, ASI was in charge of the project. They did some restoration works initially. And after that, we also joined into the picture and we did the work along with ASI. So these are and we had to find the whole set of craftsmen for this work. So these are some of the people who worked along with us. Thangamani Ashari, who's no more today, or Chandretan, again, is no more. But these are very important people who worked with us, who kind of gave us insights into how to do the work or how to carry out the project. And we have people like Shivadasetan and Shankaretan who's still working with us on projects. And this is how the whole work happened, The conservation was there, and then we had the Cochin Devastam Board who were the owners, and then we had Archaeological Survey of India. We had TVS Group, VGKT Trust, who were the donors, and then we had the Vastu people, along with the priests, astrologers, the whole set of group there, and then we had us, DD Architects. We were kind of combining this whole thing or coordinating this entire group and taking this work along. So again, we had more people. We had devotees and other committees. So there's a whole bunch of groups which used to interact with us on a daily basis. And we also, since we are from Thrissur, we could we could go there every day and try and coordinate the work. And again, around 300 to 500 workers in this whole 10 or 15 years were there taking the project forward. Now, the whole idea is again how to keep the authenticity and integrity, and a lot of stories. Like you can see that this was covered with lime, and then we took it out, and then we could see this fine sculpture, and many stories like that, where every day you discover something new, and we work along with the craftsmen, and we find out, okay, this is to be done, and we also it's the whole way how this work was done. Normally, in a conservation project, in Western models, how they do a detailed documentation of a structure, and then they figure out what is to be done on each and every part. And then they give a tender, and they decide on the workers, and that's how usually work is done. But this is a very reversal of the process. We identify a structure, we have a meeting there where we have the craftsmen, we have the archaeology experts, and then we have the donor, we have us. And in that single meeting, which takes around maybe 3 hours, 4 hours, we analyze the entire structure, we talk to the craftsmen, we decide, okay, this is what is to be done, the work is to be given to this person, and then we start the project. We start the project, then and there we'll write the minutes, we go for a meeting around, and then we'll decide, okay, next 6 months we carry out with this project, with this team, and these are the things to be done. So that's how the entire project progressed for 10 to 15 years. And we also had discussions with astrologers, priests, tantris, devotees, everyone, the people who come there daily. And after the entire process, once it is done, then again we had things like ashtakota, oil for treating the wood. And this top part, what we see, this whole mogappa, this was in a bad condition. So this entire team took something like 6 months to do the structure. And it's not seen when you go to the temple generally. So it also shows that, okay, it's not to be something just for the public to see. Even if no one sees it, we have to make the structure beautiful. And we used materials like lime, and we have not used cement for the entire structure. And what we found out is lime, there are special ways of making lime in each context. Now, every place had its own indigenous materials. We had things like Unyalwalli, Kadikka, Sharkara, Kulirmavindella. So these workers used to go there, say, I want to pluck some of these. And then we leave them, and then they go get these ingredients, come back, again do the mix. So there's a whole process of preparing these materials, which is new learning for us, and very indigenous materials. Now, the same lime is prepared in a different way when we go to Gujarat. Although the main ingredients are the same, it's rock lime and shell lime, but the additives are very different place to place. So that was very interesting. And as we all know, lime is a very good material, offers high degrees of thermal insulation and condensation control. So using lime was fantastic, and it's much better than cement or many of the new materials. And another material which we were using is copper. So copper is used quite a bit in this complex for the roofing. And one thing which kind of was intriguing me is how did copper come here, So we were doing an exhibition towards the end of this project, and then was trying to figure out, and was talking to one person, Mr. Matthews, and we figured out there was a lot of trade, metal trade, which happened between Kerala and Europe. And they have records that in around 1500 plus, there was a ship carrying copper which came here in exchange of spices. So these kind of information is available, especially in the archives in Lisbon. You have a whole written content on this kind of trade, and books have been published. And wood, of course, is the most important material in this whole context. And it's very interesting how wood is used, and there's a whole range of joinery. You can see some of this. And actually, it's a language in itself, which I would say a normal architecture student does not learn in college. So I think that's something very interesting. Possibly every college should have a 1-month course, or at least something which introduces them to, because this is very local, it's there around them, So because we have things like Kudam, where all the rafters come together, and then things like Uttaram. Uttaram is nothing but the wall plate. And then we use terms like Uttarachutta, the perimeter of the Uttaram. And then we have Vala. Vala is something which connects all the rafters, which runs through the rafters. And Vala Bandham, which connects the Vala. And we have something called Balagudam. Balagudam is this which comes down, which actually connects the rafter and the Balagudottaram, which connects. So it's a language in itself, which is very interesting. And the joineries are again very intricate, complex, very interesting. This is something which a normal architecture student doesn't learn in Kerala. So I think that is something, it's a treasure available out there. Still, there are people who know all this. Still, it's there to learn. So I think that's something which we learned in the last 15, 20 years of practice, just by being with these people. And again, this whole process of things are assembled outside. It's called Porangota. Porangota is a structure is installed outside whenever, now when we're working in places like Guruvayur, where the time available is something like 1 hour, 2 hour inside. And so we can't waste time inside trying to figure out how things are done. So we needed to do the Porangota. And then once things are set, it's very much like the prefabricated structures what we do today. Just take it out, you fix it back. So it's very close to prefabricated structures. And this is the person inspecting how to fix it. And this is the roof. This is the wala. This is mogappa. And again, this is when we fix the Tariya Kodam. This happens as a there are many rituals which happens. You know, this is one of the rituals which happens when we fix the Tariya Kodam. And in that we pour things like Navara Nella. It's a special kind of Nella grains, and it doesn't get spoiled often. And we also put things like gems, coins along with it. So this is one of the way we can also figure out what is the last time perhaps the restoration was done. We could get some Victorian coins of 1880 and things like that. Though we figured out someone has done some work at that point of time. So we added some coins from 2015 and all that. So that maybe after 100 years, if someone takes it out, they'll know that, okay, some person has worked at that point of time. So again, these are very interesting things which we could experience. And again, when we talk of wood, there's a whole process. I think that's also the philosophy of how we look at things, especially if the wood is for an important structure like a deity and all. They'll go near the tree in the forest. They'll go there, they light a lamp, and they also tell the tree that, okay, we are going to cut you tomorrow. And whatever living and non-living things over the tree, please find a place for yourself. Yeah. And we will do this tree cutting tomorrow morning. Yeah. So that was kept there, and then the next day morning. So it's somewhere, it's a belief that we give importance to everything in the universe, whether it's living, non-living, we give that kind of respect. So I think that respect is important in this whole work. Where again, before we put the Uttaram is very important. Uttaram is the wall plate. Now the whole architecture is based on the Uttaram because we have things like Uttarachitta and the perimeter of the Uttaram, and based on that they'll finish the wall and things like that. So some kind of a puja is done for the Uttaram before they keep it on the top. So there's a whole set of rituals from the ground ceremony, and then keeping of the door, and then the Uttaram, keeping of the Uttaram, and then finally the removal of the first old piece of copper. So the entire series of events which keep repeating, which keep coming, which makes the whole conservation process complete. And in parallel, along with Vadakkunnathan project, there was another project which we were involved, which is kind of Kerala House. It's called Kerala Houses Documentation. There's a friend of mine in Pondicherry called Sri Podar, Prabhat Podar. He used to do energy research. What is the energy of these buildings? How? So he used to do a modern research. So he was a close friend, and he had supported this project. So the idea was to document around 50 houses from the north to south of Kerala across different communities. Also to find out how the rooms were placed, what is the science behind it, is there some science behind it. So the whole idea was that. And this project is not complete. Podaji is no more now, but we hope to complete at some time. It's halfway through. And again, also because the way they explain in Vastu is something like, okay, you have to put the bedroom in the southwest, you have to put the kitchen here, and it all becomes standardized. But we believe we can't standardize these things. it changes. That's again something which when we see in Kerala, every village had its own carpenter. Every village had its own system of doing things. We can't standardize these things all over the country. We have books now. Okay, you place something here, it's good, or you. So I think we don't think these things can be standardized. So it changes village to village. But sadly, today that systems are not there so much. We need to bring certain level of standardization. But we like to understand the subtle differences which happens place to place. So this is Tanjavur Ramaveda in Trivandrum, the structure which Swati Tirunal had built. And we had a Padinarakatta behind, where the dancers Sundari Lakshmi and all used to stay. And it also, we say, it's important for Mohiniyattam. It's also one of the places where Mohiniyattam as a dance form has evolved the way it is today. So again, we had documented around 15 to 20 structures are already done. We hope to do the next 20 structures in future. Yeah. And after Vadakkunnathan, and we had worked on Thekkinkadu Maidan. Now, Thekkinkadu Maidan is a space around the temple. This is the temple, and this is the entire Maidan. So this is around 60 plus acres, and it's a very unique place, I would say, in the country. And again, when we talk in the conservation perspective, it's a good example, because uh, we have all kind of restrictions there. Okay, because of the temple and being an archaeological monument, there is a set of restrictions, and some people have gone to court saying that nothing should be built here. So anything you try to build anything, high court, there's a high court order, so that we can't really go and build anything there. And then we have all kind of committees, political things happen there, and politicians are involved. And then we have the devotees committee, and we have the public, and we have the walkers. And so the entire set of people, entire set of stakeholders, which makes difficult to build something there, which I feel is very important in this country, because if you don't have many stakeholders, people can go get things done. Maybe because there are so many stakeholders, we still have this place protected, serene, as we see it today. So sometimes some projects come, we try to oppose those projects. We say, we don't need that, the place is okay the way it is. So yeah, it's like that. And now you see the Maidan, there are different things which we did there. One is tree documentation. I've got some of them here. So we published this documentation of the trees, around 600 trees, around 100 species, which is done by Intact Thrissur, with the help of some very good experts, taxonomists. And these are some of the meetings which used to happen for documenting it. We did it as a public exercise with help of volunteers from colleges and schools. And again, there are things which we did for the Maidan. We did studies about water management, soil management, biodiversity, and conservation, and again, how to do the waste management properly. So all these studies were done, and some part of it is getting started today. Some of it is getting started, and some of it is being done. And this is another project which had happened. So we started works in Guruvayur Temple around 2016-17. And the first project was Bhagavati Temple restoration. It's not shown here. That was the first major project there. After that, we worked on the Koothambalam, Guruvayur. And Koothambalam, as you all know, it's the theater for Kodiyattam and Kotha, basically. And you can see now it's all painted blue and brown, and there was again painted. So our whole process was to bring back the original color, and again, Guruvayur, as you know, has a mural school. And so they had painted all the wood with murals as an exercise for the classroom. So then we had we had to bring it out, make it back to the original condition. And then we did some bit of lighting. And this is some of the studies which we did for the roof form. Yeah. And both these structures, the Guruvayur Koothambalam and Vadakkunnathan Temple, we were awarded by UNESCO. And Koothambalam, as a structure, it again has a lot of acoustic properties and things like that, which helps in the performance. As we know, I think people who would have seen Kodiyatam, it needs that kind of a distance. You can't see a Kodiyatam like how it's in the State Youth Festival. You need to, maybe this is, I think it's the right distance, because the face expressions, the expression of the eyes, these are very important. So that is also very critical. This is a detailed drawing which we did. So for the entire structure, the ceiling, there was a lot of black soot, so we had to remove that. And then wooden members were painted, as we said earlier, so we had to remove the paint. And then there were cheraga, there's a special ornament. The Koothambalam roof is known as Valakkanni in Malayalam. It's like it's not like a net. So then that's a kind of roof which is there. So that had issues here and there, so we had to correct it. So it was kind of a total restoration which happened. Yeah. Sorry. We did some work with the stone also. The stone also needed some kind of restoration, so we did stitching and some of the work for the stone also. After Guruvayur, or around the same time, this project came to us, which is Ramanilayam conservation. Ramanilayam, as you might be knowing, is one of the British residencies. It's the British residency in Thrissur, which is a state guest house managed by Kerala Tourism today. So Kerala had a lot of these residencies. You had in Kochi has a British residency, which is a guest house. Means the old structure is still there. And Kollam, the residencies in Kollam is the most important one, I would say, built in 1810 by Munro, and Calicut has near West Hill. So Kerala had all these, and these places were basically used as guest houses for VVIPs at that point of time. Maybe the king's guests, the divan used to stay here in Thrissur from 1907 to 1914. There was a divan called Banerjee, Mr. Banerjee, who he used to stay in this place. And there were other important guests when they come, like a state guest, they come and stay here. So I would say it is the address for the town, yeah. And people like Nehru, Jawaharlal Nehru, Indira Gandhi, all these, and the presidents, all of them have stayed here. So this structure was in a bad shape when we got it for conservation, maybe because of not so great maintenance by the PWD. So then we had to do a total restoration. So again, when we work with government projects, it's a very different from working with corporates or private projects. Things are not so simple. We had things like we have to do a whole different things like the tender, Delhi DSR rates, and the entire working methodology is very different. But then we were very lucky that the contractor who worked with us from Sakthan Palace times, he had taken this project, so we could work pretty well. And I would say it is possibly one of the best government guest houses today in Kerala. Yeah, and we also got to see some of very fine furniture there. These are around 100-year-old furnitures made by a company called Wren Bennett from Chennai. They used to do these beautiful rosewood furnitures, which was even supplied for the Delhi Darbar in 1911. You might have heard of Delhi Darbar. It used to be meetings between all the local rulers organized by the British. So they have supplied furniture there, and we actually found the shop in Chennai. We went and saw the shop recently, but the furniture is not that great. These are beautiful. Yeah, maybe it has also evolved with the time. Yeah, so we also did the restoration of these kind of furnitures, and that was also there. And we did lighting, and it is a fantastic experience working with the government. And we are also doing some small consultations for Alua Guest House now. not the total project, but some kind of conservation advice. Yeah, and this is also some parallel works which we happen to do. There was this structure called Parayanur Palace near Chelakara in Thrissur, and someone called me, one teacher, very senior teacher, called me one day, and she heard that, okay, this is going to get demolished. Why don't you go and have a look? So we went and saw this structure, and this is actually very important for the Cochin royal family, because Cochin royal family, it's also called Perumbadappu Swarupam. Now, Perumbadappu as a place is somewhere in Malappuram. So they actually traveled from, maybe because of Zamarin and other kind of rivalries, they traveled through the Bharatapura, and then they came to Parayanur, and then they traveled again. So before finally settling in Tripunithura, they have crossed 4-5 places. So Parayanur Bhagavati, that way, is still very important for them. You can see a Parayanur Bhagavati shrine inside Mattancherry Palace. It is a small shrine, so it's a family deity for them. And there used to be this small palace where they used to stay when they come to worship in this temple. Yeah, it's like a short stay. They can come and be there. So when we went there, we realized the tender is already on for selling the palace, for taking out the wood. So when we went there, they thought we are one of the tender participants. So they said, okay, it's around 80,000 or 1 lakh. You can take the wood, and it's on for within the next 2 weeks. We are going to demolish and things like that. So we were talking with all the fellow contractors who came there. And then it was interesting. Then somehow at that point, we were lucky. From Intact Thrissur, we could write to the minister, we wrote to the archaeology department, and they responded pretty fast. So within a week or two, the collector got a notice telling that now it's protected. It's not a protected monument, but they sent an order saying that it shouldn't be demolished. And also Intact could arrange some funds, and we could do the basic repair. It's not that the full work is done. The full work is still to be done. We are still looking for sponsors. We need some money, maybe 50 lakhs or some money, but we did a basic first aid work, Now it was like this, but we could make it like this. With some funds from Intact, we did a first aid project so that the building doesn't fall down. Because if we had not done that, it could fall down at any point of time, especially with the kind of monsoons we have and leakage, all these things happening. So I think this is also very important as architects or as conservation people. It's important to do this first aid for many of these structures, especially today, because any structure you see, you have so many examples which we see on a daily basis, which we say the building is in not so great form, it will fall down, it's unfit. I think that's the word they use. It's unfit. So that's the first thing they say, it's unfit, so you need to pull it down. So you need to do this kind of first aid work for most of these structures so that it survives. I think that's very important. And then you can do larger conservation. And in fact, while doing some work for a Croatia-based agency, I found out we were doing some juries, and there's something called a ambulance. That ambulance is not a normal ambulance like what we do for patients. It's a building conservation ambulance where they have all these things in an ambulance, and then they go there, they do this immediate works so that the buildings doesn't fall down. And then the larger things like operation and all that can happen later. But you do the basic works, just like how we get an injury in the field, you do the basic work. So I think that's also very critical, especially in today's age. Yeah. So this is again another project which we were involved. It's Vanchikulam. Vanchikulam is the old waterway in Thrissur, the heritage waterway. So the past 50 years, we've been listening stories that Vanchikulam will get repaired soon. It's part of the master plan. So every time, right from 1970s, I think they've been talking this. So when we finally started doing this project, people told us that nothing's going to happen. It's been there for long. And somewhere again, we were lucky. We worked with Kerala Tourism and the corporation, and we could restore the place, make it into a public space where events are conducted. Yeah. So even yesterday I went there briefly. So it's become a place in the town where people could come in. The waterway is also restored to some extent, but we haven't been able to restore the entire stretch of waterway because it's again connected to the Kerala water channels, So that part we haven't done fully, but the space we could restore and bring it back to life. And last 2 years, we were working with many agencies to do a festival called Vanchikulam Fest, where we bring in artists. A lot of events happen there, and it's like a flea market. So many things happen there for 3 days. And that is something which we could do for the last 2 years, again, with a lot of people coming in. We were collaborating with Lalit Kala Academy and many agencies. So 8 to 10 agencies, corporation, and we all came together and we did this festival for 2 years. Now we don't know whether it's going to happen for every year, but I think as long as it's got done, it went well, it went successfully. We are happy. Yeah. And you can see these are the water networks which we could see, and that's very interesting. And we could find out there was a network right from Trivandrum up to Bekal or up to Kasargod. There's a whole way in which the waterways were operating in Kerala. Very important for a certain point of time. And again, parallelly, some of the works we do from INTAC, you can say there's something, we do heritage walks, and the bottom one is Kodungalur temple drawing. Again, Kodungalur, it's a very important place. It's part of Musiris. So we had a whole documentation work we did for Kodungalur. And then there's a walk we did for Koothambalam. This is a very interesting place. These are basically Christian houses with a lot of merchants, and very interesting place. Yeah. And this is Parenur. And this is in Kasargod. We were working with Gateway in Bekal. And again, we somehow were able to support the Kasargod Sari group there. And we also have placed a loom in the reception of the hotel. So when the CM had come for the inauguration, he was interacting with the people there, and they were very happy, because these are like from 500 weavers. Now today you have around 30 or 20 to 30 weavers. That's also in a very not too great form. So we could give some life to some of them. And this is Thrissur railway station, Maharaja's guest house, again a building under risk which can come down. So we are also trying to work on it. And this is one of our craftsmen, Mr. Joy, who's a oxide worker. Now we've been working with him for past 15 to 17 years, worked on some of our initial projects. So today he's some kind of a celebrity. He travels all over the country doing this kind of works. And yeah, this is our lime worker called Vijay Kumar. We did a small workshop in one of our sites, the students there. Yeah. And these are some of our publications. We have brought some of them. So if anyone is interested to purchase, they can. It's there with Punya and Krishna. I think they having some books if you want interested. And these are 3 publications, basically. One, Temples of Kerala. It's like a what to do, what not to do. Just a very basic book meant for normal people, not really conservation experts, not to paint wood, not to use cement. So it's a very basic book. And a book we brought out from Brahmasam Madam. And then this is a book of Vadakkunnathan. It's a coffee table book, but it's a kind of sponsor's copy. We are not putting it for sale. And these are some of the awards which we got in Guruvayur, in Vadakkunnathan, all that. So what are our insights, or what have we learned from all these years of working on some of these important projects is, now, I think our circumstances have changed, the social systems have changed, so we cannot expect the local ruler to protect these craftsmen or to do all that. That systems have changed for the good. And so we have to find new sponsors, new patrons, according to the age today. So it's very important for any craft form, whether it's fabric, whether it's building forms. I think it's important to find out the whole set of new patrons, new sponsors, so that these things survive, the craft do survive. That's one important thing. And I would say there's serious lack of expertise when it comes to conservation in Kerala today. Also because I don't think there's any college here really teaching conservation. So the serious lack of expertise. So we need to skill people. it's very important to skill people. Then we need to carry out awareness programs or lectures. For PWD, there were some board experts because they they are in charge of many of the serious important structures or monuments in the state. And then at the government level, I think there needs to be a team of conservation architects or experts. And then we need a lot of structural conservation experts, because engineers today, they lack in expertise for masonry structures. They know RCC, but they really don't know how to work with masonry structures. And then the way history taught has to be changed. We don't know local history, especially while working in many of the monuments like Vadakkunnathan or Ramanilayam. We had to do a lot of struggle to figure out the age of Ramanilayam. It's just 100 years old, 120 years old. But I had to depend on a friend from the US, a person who writes a blog, some person called Maddie, who did some research there, sitting there, who get some archives, some old gazettes, and before finally getting the age of the building. I had asked a lot of history, local teachers, experts, professors, but nowhere we could get the age. And even when we talk of Vadakkunnathan, then people give all kind of ages. Sometimes more, sometimes less. And I've seen publications where they say Koothambalam is 5,000 years old. Koothambalam is an art form. It's 2,000 years, or Koothambalam is just 400-year-old structure. So I think we have no idea of age. In some way, in olden days, it used to be okay. It used to be fine. But in today's age, I think we need that kind of expertise where we know history, and also because only then the local people will respect monuments. Now, when we go to places like Kodakkal, which is the megalithic tomb or umbrella stone near Kunangalam, the locals don't like the structure somehow because they have restrictions because of archaeology that they can't build this, and they really don't like the structure too much. When you go and talk to them, they say it's not so important. Okay, some stones because of. But when you go to UK and see Stonehenge, they've made a whole economy out of it. So we need to see how to monetize, how to bring a kind of economic importance also, because I think in today's age, that's the only way things can survive. So that's what I've written. Conservation and protection of heritage has to be an economically advantageous activity. So somehow we need to bring in economics into it. And we have to develop new tools, systems to explain our heritage monuments for the new generation, integrated with technology. I think that's also very important. Then it's important has to be highlighted, especially how conservation becomes important with the current age of climate change, where we need to conserve energy. I think conservation is an important tool in that context also. And again, finally, with our rich heritage and history, I think there's tremendous scope in our country where conservation can become an overall positive, life-changing experience. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Architect Vinod, for that enlightening lecture. You have surely made it a life-changing experience for yourself. The floor is open to questions. If anyone wants to ask a question, please raise your hand. Yes.
One of the most important points here, which you have listed out, is the economic motive. For example, we find very often a situation where somebody has inherited a property, which later they discover, or bought a property, let's say, whatever, and then they discover it's a heritage. Somebody comes and says it's a heritage building. Now you can't do anything with it, if it is notified. So everybody else is convinced it's very important and all that. But what about the poor chap who owns that place? So there has to be a way to find to find a solution for that. And I heard about solutions which have been found, like transferable FSI and all that.
Yes.
So are those things in practice in Kerala?
Personally, I don't think it's still in practice in Kerala. In places like Mumbai, they have tried to do that, but not yet practiced in Kerala. And it's very important that these are practiced, both for the owner and even for the professionals. Also, there should be some kind of, uh, one can say, if you say in Europe, it's very important. Conservation architect is very important because you can't touch these structures. Many of the structures, it's protected, and definitely there is an advantage for the owner, because if you go to London, some of the most important places or most valuable places are the old heritage spaces. Yeah. So which is there in many important cities across the world. So where people understand the value of heritage, how an economic advantage can happen through heritage. But here still it needs to be worked out, and we need expertise. We need to carry out a lot of work, background work. We need to do the documentation, listing, which people like Intact is trying to do, and then it is to be notified, and things like TDS has to be worked out. So I would say we are still long way back. We still have to do a lot of work. But recently, a positive thing which has been seen, there is a value for the tourism market. In the tourism market, there is a value for heritage. So some structures are being conserved for tourists and for some kind of hospitality activities, But still, there is a long way. We have still a long way to go. Agree to it.
Just as a rejoinder to that.
Yeah.
But I'm not blaming you all. You're doing your best, but things are just not moving fast enough. Yes. 20 years ago, when I was that time working in Trivandrum, I arranged for one of my friends who's an outstanding architect from Chennai, P.T. Krishnan.
Yep.
Now, Krishnan, one of his passions was conservation of historically important buildings and neighborhoods. And he came and gave a seminar I invited him down to, and this Nirmati Kendra hosted and I remember town planners all were asking very aggressively, how do you address situations like this and all. So he was surprised. He said, there are solutions, right now. The only thing is, these are not very, very impossible things. So this happened 20 years ago. And still, if nothing has been done to implement transferable FSI,
yeah.
And already in this time frame, I think hundreds of historical buildings have got damaged or destroyed.
Yes. Agree to you, sir. 100%.
Mine is not a question, but something that I experienced after listening to what you were saying. I got an old house, inherited an old house, and I did it up without knowing anything with the local carpenters and workers. And because I knew how it should look, I didn't even know what a tumba was and a kotta was, anything. They said, you have to buy that. I said, okay, what's that for? I didn't even know. Anyway, I got it done. And all of them told me, please don't tell anyone that we did it. ഞങ്ങൾക്ക് മാനക്കേട പിന്നെ ഗ്ലേസിങ്ങും ഇല്ല ഒന്നും ഇല്ല എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞു.
But I think still their intent has to be respected. It's wonderful that you could protect the structure.
I loved it so much. I did it. Everyone told me you're being very foolish doing an old thing like this. But I'm glad I did it because I love the place.
I think you deserve a lot of respect, ma'am.
Thanks.
I wanted to appreciate the workshop you did for the lime work. To illustrate how lime work was done. Do you have any outreach programs for students? And I don't mean just architecture students, but maybe even smaller children, so they can start appreciating heritage structures and the design and the language that goes into the woodwork, for instance. I'm sure we've lost that language by now. So how do we get to teach them? How can we?
The language is still not lost. The language is still there with the carpenters. They are still available. And from our office, we do two things. One, we are part of Intact Thrissur. I'm the convener of Intact Thrissur. So we do some walks and some programs through Intact Thrissur. And also something which we do from our office, DD Architects, is a workshop called AYA, which happens once in a year, twice in a year, where we do workshops for special groups where we announce it and then we do workshops. We'll keep you informed, ma'am. Thank you.
I think a lot of this has to do with practitioners sharing their knowledge also. So from your level to the carpenter to be able to say that, children get to see. But then how do you make sure numbers, no, Sarika? Not just the few privileged, your children and my children come for, but more than, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think Intac has some program where they kind of uh, give some kind of awareness programs on craft
Yeah.
in schools. I think some of these can be worked out. Yeah,
Film it workshop for Intact's,
workshop. Yeah,
the films on heritage
yeah.
is coming
Also,
up. In fact, those were amazing. The
yeah,
children
yeah.
made such fantastic films. It's
Yes.
coming up on the 14th year. So,
Yes, yes.
yeah. Anyone else?
Hi, fascinating talk. I think a lot of things were mentioned. The fact that we still have sort of a Western model of teaching architecture, and these kind of sort of indigenous um, understandings are probably need to be integrated into our curriculum at some level. That would be a great first step where architecture students get to learn about lime and timber, because if you talk to an architecture student now, they only know RCC and they only know how to work with cement, and that's the model, even though they are being trained here. So I think that is one possible solution. Another is maybe the storytelling.
Yeah.
I think what Kerala tourism has done is started storytelling really well,
Yes.
and I think that has brought an idea of conservation. So where I come from in Kottayam, we have practically wiped out everything of heritage there. Even the people who've um, got, like the lady, like Geeta Chechi mentioned, like the lot of the people who inherited things have raised it to the ground and rebuilt, these kind of concrete monstrosities that are 5 floors and, I mean, 2, 3 floors, whatever. So I think a kind of storytelling is needed. And what are your thoughts on how we can storytell? Like, do you feel
There's one thing which I think we attempted it once or twice with some friend in NIT Calicut. The idea was you allow students to interact or work along with a craftsman. Now, I think that's also very important. Now, working along with Tangamani Chetan, it also meant going out to have a cup of coffee with him in the evening where you listen to his stories, his way of. So it's not just, I would say, buildings. It's also about the values, their lifestyle, how they learn things, their experiences. I think it's a whole package. So it's not just, okay, wood and lime, it's also about the value systems, what they respect. So I think that, so you need to bring out those facilities where people get to interact. I think artists have that. They work along with some very senior masters, so they work along with them. So that helps them to develop new skills, to learn new things. So I think that kind of so some agency has to do it, because it has to be facilitated by some agency. These kind of interactions and learnings have to be done by some agency. That's all. Once it is there, there's huge scope for all these kind of interactions.
And as a follow-up, you've also done biodiversity restoration, though we haven't talked about it much here. How do we go about doing that when we work with buildings? Is there a model you suggest? How do you incorporate? First of all, there doesn't seem to be an understanding of biological diversity of space. So how did you go about doing that in a specific case?
We worked on maybe 2 or 3 projects where initially was the first learning which I got is from Sakthan restoration, where we did a kind of a forest kind of space within the city. There we had, finally we have to work with experts. There was someone called Sethu Madhavan sir, who was a ecologist, botanist that time. So he gave us the suggestions for the plants, trees, and that was a new learning for us, because around 500 species were suggested from trees, from butterfly plants. And we also some expert, a researcher who's in US now called Anil, who was an expert on butterfly gardens. And there was an expert who was who used to work with bamboo called Sita Lakshmi. So I think we need to work with these sets of experts. And now we have a fantastic person called Shashi sir. He is one of the best taxonomists in the state, who has written books on forest trees. So he was helping us on Thekkinkadu Maidan. And even for Gateway Bakel, we had given some plan suggestions and things like that. We went to the site, where when we went to the site, we realized not all the plants which grow in Thekkinkadu Maidan will grow in Bakel. So again, we have to check the site and see what works there, what grows there, and what kind of plants. So then it's again very interesting, because when we realize about each of these trees and plants, we realize every tree has a story. Now, if you see Kumar, it's used for Kathakali mask and all that. It's a soft tree. It has these kind. And when we talk of Dandapala, again, it's again an Ayurvedic plant. It has these kind of uses. So I think it opens a whole new world for you if you really go behind each of these trees. It's quite amazing, and we can find out that Kerala, especially as we talked initially, because of its monsoon and biodiversity, it has so much to offer in form of trees and plants.
Thank you. The one last thing I would say, sorry for hugging, is maybe crowdfunding. You know, we have platforms now today,
Yes.
which is used in the West to crowdfund. You have links, you can crowdfund on multiple websites. I think that if the economic part is answered in this, everything else will follow. And if we can just, the interested folks, it doesn't have to be SI, it doesn't have to be a donor. If just we have the power of numbers. If 10,000 people who care about this contribute 1,000 rupees,
Yes.
you have the fund to conserve. And I think we should look to these crowdfunding websites, and maybe that is our solution.
Yes, definitely. And that's also something which we were talking earlier. It's an expertise in itself, arts management, or how to do this whole management, because we have at least 5 projects pending now because of lack of funding, projects ready to be done, but we need to sort out the funding part. I think that's very important, how to manage these things. Yeah.
No, listening to your presentation, and also thinking about how Kerala Kalamandalam
Yes.
came to be established, I think we need an institute like that
Yes.
to preserve Kerala architecture.
Yes.
Kerala Architecture Institute
Yes.
kind of
Yes, sir.
setup is required,
Yes.
which brings together all the
Yes.
masons and
Yes.
all the carpenters who do things traditionally.
Yes.
They also get employment, as well as
Yes.
they can teach others.
Yes.
So some movement like that needs to be done.
Definitely. I think in Tamil Nadu, maybe in places like Mahabalipuram, there are small schools just to train stone craftsmen, which is funded by government or some corporates. I think we need schools like that, where even architecture students can go and see. They also get learning, because it's very important.
So we had, when we were conceptualizing the talk today, we spoke about how there's a change in the landscape and how we build and belong. And in that Kerala and migration story, migration from and out of Kerala, as well as from the professions that you are speaking about, craftspeople and all of that, how does this future unfold?
Yeah, before that I answer, I'll just tell something which I just came to my mind. Is now when we did the Sakthan Palace, the land, the biodiversity or the park, one thing which had come to us is in olden days, all of us had this old taravats or house where you go to the mother's house or father's house during holidays, and where you spend time with the pond, with the old trees. And that used to be an experience for childhood, I think, at least for one generation back. But today what has happened is, like you said, most of the old houses, it's all sold, and it's taken different forms. So we lack that kind of an experience, especially for children. So that was something which was there in our mind when we did that tree planting. Okay, there is a palace here, there is a pond, and once you fill it with all these trees, it will give them, the children, that kind of an experience, which perhaps a generation back they used to get from these old houses. So that's something which I just remembered. Yes. Yeah. And now you were asking about migration, right? How can you just, yeah. 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 I think cities change, and I think we have to agree for it. And because again, it's economically connected, you know. But I feel that change is part of it, and you like a city, you become part of a city. I don't think ownership means you have to be there or you need to be from that place. You can like the place, you can be part of the place more than the localites. So I think finally it's how you enjoy a place, how you like the place, how you can contribute to the place. I think that can happen with anyone, you know, from wherever you are from. Finally, you are from the place, you like the place, and you contribute to the place. I think it can happen with anyone.
A recurring theme in the projects that you have executed is the timelines. There are projects that have been 3 years, some projects that continue to be run 20 years. I find it fascinating that you're able to get so many different varied interest groups to align and execute over such long periods of time. Is there any like principle or philosophy that you use to make sure that everybody is moving in the positive direction, moving towards achieving the goal?
I think finally it all depends on who the donor is, who the workers are, and I think it's again a certain trust which the person has. Now I can talk of two donors. One is previous, I think Venu sir. He hasn't called me directly even till date. So it's just a certain trust which is there. And one donor which we have now, Dilip sir, he has just met for 1 hour in Taj Malabar in Kochi, and then he has given me the project and he has come for the inauguration after 1 year. Not even once he has called in between. And we have clients who are supporting or building small residences who call you for 10 times a day and, you know, and ask for all kind of changes, questions. I think it's a certain trust which people develop. And once they trust you, they just leave the project to you and you believe that, okay, it'll be finally a good job done.
So interesting part was when you talked about the process of the temple, where it's not linear, where you document and there's condition assessment and so on. So do the processes differ for all the projects? As opposed to in the Western modern, when there's a particular process that you would follow in a conservation of any structure?
We can't say this is right or that is right, but the approved systems in conservation generally now, because we worked on, you know, or we interacted with some conservation experts from the West. So what I could figure out is, okay, now for a church in Italy, they have done research for 15 years before touching a brick, where they went through each of the minute details, researched on it before they really did something there, you know. And that is a good way to do. But, you know, now we have to agree, or we have to look into the context also where we are working, what is practical here, what can be done. And for the temple project, we felt this works out perfectly, where we are all in alignment, where we have the donor, we have the archaeologists, and we have the craftsmen. And so we were all in a single alignment, and things could do or things could work well. Now, if one of these doesn't work, it's like a wheel. If the donor is not working well, or if the craftsman is not up to the mark, things can go haywire. So we need a perfect alignment for things to go well, which is somewhere we were lucky that that was there.
One more, Jeffrey. Last one.
Just because Kerala Kalamandalam was mentioned, I went for the International Festival of Kodiyatam. Now you see that whole structure, everything is beautifully made, but the whole performance was overshadowed by these blasting speakers that were right in front, and that we had people listening who were covering their ears. So imagine all this work, and the bathroom, don't even talk about that. So you go in, you build, and you conserve, and you maintain this beautiful ambience, and you come in feeling magical, and there's too many lights, there is too much sound. So it's not just
Yes.
conserving something. It is about how you run the place.
Yes.
You go to the temples and churches now, the old ones. The old churches 200 years ago, you'd have one lamp in front of the cross, or you'd have one lamp in front of the deity, and everybody looks in to see it.
Yes.
That's the beauty of the experience.
Yes.
Now you have spotlight, flashlight, lights everywhere, and it's like, what is the point?
True.
So conservation is one thing, and how you operate it is a huge other aspect of these buildings, and I feel that is completely missed.
Yeah, and I would like to add one point now for the Vadakkunnathan part. The donor is actually maintaining it, or it's not fully. We are still maintaining, or we have a limited number of people helping to maintain the structure, which we feel is very important, because we leave it to the Devasam board. After spending 10 years or 15 years, within a year or two, it can come back to the original shape. Yeah. Or so it's very important to keep some kind of control. And why we are also doing things like Vanchikulam Fest is because now we've done a structure, we've given it to the government or the corporation. Once we are there once in a year for a week, we can at least change the bulbs, make sure that the water is operating, So I think it's important to keep a limited level of connection to the place. Whoever has designed it or worked on it, it's very important. Otherwise, things can go in some other form. Yeah.
So with that, we come to the end of this Janal talk. It's been an interesting new direction that we've taken, thanks to Robin Jeffrey's photographs, and it's allowed us to come and meet other disciplines as well. But history being the main subject that we're trying to explore and its intersections. So we thank the Geojit Foundation for their shared commitment to the museum's mission, and for making it possible to have these public engagements where we all can get together and meet esteemed scholars, I would say, because you're not, more than an architect, you have spent years immersed in these sites. And to our audiences, your participation is vital to carrying on these talks and lectures in this kind of shared exploration. And I really thank you for being on board with all of the new curation that we do and showing up here every time, braving the traffic and all of that. I know some of you today reached a little bit late. For when you're stuck in traffic, I hope you begin the lecture on YouTube and get here and catch up. That's all I can say with Cochin's current traffic scenario. Vinod, thank you so much for being such a willing participant, sharing your knowledge, your insights. I know each Janal talk is different, so for you also, you had to, bring your version of Janal to this series. Particularly, some great ideas from our audience today, some lovely ideas that if we had unlimited funding, could take off. But we were talking about sponsors and patrons earlier on also, and the importance of really garnering, community support to come together to do work like this that would not otherwise get any kind of focus. Earlier on today, I was also talking to a few other people about how do you establish the need for this kind of funding. And through your talk today, we've seen what is possible with the kind of support for conservation that you have been able to get so far. So thank you so much. I hope that the talk continues to be a resource for people online. You can log on to the Kerala Museum YouTube channel and watch it anytime. It's already there live, so catch it later also. A small token of our appreciation for you. Should give it to you with my right hand. Vinod is here. If anybody wants to carry on the discussion for a few minutes, you can.
Yeah, few of our publications are there. You can get it from
On the table at the back there.
Krishna and Punya, if interested. Thank you. Yeah.